Swales, When Burnout Becomes Reality podcast creator, producer, host, everything really. A podcast that was born out of my own lived experience of burnout and my desire to connect with people who were or are going through or have gone through burnout and share my own experience. And it's evolved from there to also having guests come on the show and for me to share professional wisdom as to how to navigate this thing we call burnout to help prevent, recover, and really transform and evolve so we don't get burnt out again. So this is When Burnout Becomes Reality podcast. Please note that whilst my guests, some of us work in the burnout field and we are coaches, counselors, therapists in this space, that the information we do provide, the wisdom that we do share, cannot be tailored to meet your personal needs and should not be a replacement of going out there and getting personalized help and support from a professional in burnout for yourself. I can't stress that enough. And please, if you are finding you need immediate counselling, I really encourage to link with your a GP, a doctor, to help you with that. Here in Australia, we also have national telephone and online services, Lifeline 13114, and especially if there is any risk to yourself, if you're feeling suicidal, please contact your local emergency services, or national I should say. Here in Australia, that is 000, and also Lifeline 13114. With that in mind, please sit back, or if you're someone who listens to your pod while exercising or your commute, whatever you're doing, I hope that you find this episode enlightening and supportive in your journey and your experience with burnout. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now. In this episode, we dive into the lived experience of neurodivergent burnout with the inspiring Chrissy Foreman, an AuDHDer, person living with both autism and ADHD. Chrissy's journey is a testament to acceptance, creativity, and self-discovery. She shares her experiences of neurodivergent burnout, how it shows up, its cyclic nature, the unique challenges of being late diagnosed, and what helps her prevent and respond to burnout when it arises. Chrissy is a neuro-affirming artist and arts therapist based in South East Queensland, Australia. Through her work, she empowers the autistic and ADHD community to connect, feel understood, and express their authentic selves through creative and artistic wellbeing techniques. As a mother of a teenage boy and a passionate enthusiast of nature, plants, and Lego, Chrissy brings a vibrant and relatable perspective to our conversation. Together, we unpack the lessons Chrissy has learned about navigating AuDHDer burnout. We explore the tools that now support her and share countless pearls of wisdom for anyone who identifies as neurodivergent or suspects that they might be. This episode is packed with insight, validation, and hope. It was an absolute joy to have this conversation with Chrissy, especially as a midlife woman who is questioning and navigating the assessment process for autism and ADHD. I really hope that you get a lot out of this episode. Take care of you. Hey, Chrissy, and welcome to When Burnout Becomes Reality pod. It's absolutely wonderful to have you here, and I appreciate you making the time to come and speak to us about your experiences of burnout as an, hopefully I'm going to say this right, AuDHDer. And also it's so wonderful to have you as well speaking to your story of burnout, because you're also an art therapist, an artist. So so welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Shannon. I'm really excited.
You're more than welcome. And it's so serendipitous. I think that is the right word, how we met. Like, I was exploring connecting back into art. I still haven't connected with you in that way, but I found you, I don't know how, but linked to your newsletter and with your business, AuTuition.
Yep.
AuTuition, yes, I love that name. And it was one of your newsletters where you shared that you were coming out of a burnout, and I was reading what you shared, and I was like, oh, I need to connect with Chrissy. I need to talk with her and see if she'll come on the show and share with us her experience. So here you are. So thank you.
Yay, that is serendipity, definitely. Meant to
Yes,
be.
it's meant to be. And it's been wonderful, yeah, getting to know you. So, hey, well, let's get to know you a little bit. I just wanted to ask you, to tell us a little bit about you. Like, who are you? Who are you in this world? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm neurodivergent, so I'm Chrissy Foreman. I have autism and ADHD that have been late diagnosed, so in my 40s, both of those. I'm an artist, lifelong artist, arts therapist over the last few years, teacher, so it kind of has come together. Um,
Wow.
I have three cats in the house that may make a cameo throughout this.
Oh,
They love to come
please.
up.
I welcome cat cameos, any cameos really, but animal cameos definitely.
And yeah, I really, and I've just finished my master's in therapeutic arts research. So my topic has been around neurodivergent sensory experiencing. And so I was really excited when you reached out because I've learned so much about neurodivergent burnout, particularly in relation to autism and ADHD, and how that really connects in with our sensory profile. So yeah, we can certainly chat a bit more about that. But yeah, I
Yeah.
geek out on research about things that I'm interested in and get fully into my hyper focus and yeah, which I
Wow.
can learn out from as well. So
Yeah, yeah, good see.
struggling.
But love to learn. And you mentioned there you were like a teacher. Well, you are like I feel like as therapists, a lot of it or teaching, sharing of wisdom is part of it. But teacher background. Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
wow. How
yeah.
long were you doing that for?
Well, I don't think I ever stop. I've kind of
Mm,
I wanted to do art straight out of school, but my parents thought I should get a real job, so I went into getting qualifications for teaching. Um,
mhm.
So, and then when I was in my 20s and I'd finished, I ended up I've mostly worked in early childhood, and then kind of went into primary. But yeah, over the years, I've ended up dipping back into art from my 20s, and I've
Mm,
kept on studying and studying and studying because once again, it's my hyper focus and I love it.
yeah.
I think teaching is a really beautiful kind of base because it enables you to
Mm,
connect with lots of different people, both the children
mm,
and the families. But I really think that that's kind of really helped me in terms of being an art therapist as well, because
mm,
being able to bring that understanding of difference
mm,
and different ways of approaching things
mm,
and be able to teach skills, teach skills
mm,
in how to look after ourselves and how to make art, but in a way that's kind of all about well-being and self-nourishment and stuff, because yeah, I'm extremely prone to burnout. So I'm really interested in this
yeah.
topic. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What a rich history there, and getting to know you, and also how the autism and ADHD can influence that burnout or contribute to that, which we'll find yeah, hugely. But what's something I suppose outside of I suppose workspace, but I really hear that it's not just work, it's really the heart space. It's really what guides you. I mean, art's always been in your life. So I know this question is, not quite separate, but like outside of that space of your life, is there, what would we see you doing? Is there, yeah.
Lots of nature. And yeah, so I think just being an artistic soul, I am really tuned into beauty. So being in nature
Mm,
is just such a gorgeous experience for me because I often joke that if I ever went on a group hike, I'd always be left behind because I'm, 10 steps in looking at these beautiful flowers and touching leaves.
mm,
So yeah,
mm,
nature for me is such a inspiration. It's a beautiful regulator. And yeah, I love gardening. I've got a little
mm.
I've set up a little shack out the front of my house with all plants on it for a community plant swap so people can come and bring plants and swap them.
Oh,
So
like the book swap, but a plant
okay, but
swap. Oh,
plants.
love it. I love it. That is
Yeah.
gorgeous. Love it.
Yes, I would say being in nature. And for me, I like have a relational experience with nature. Look,
Mm,
I feel like the flowers and the trees are my friends. And that may sound airy-fairy, but sometimes for me, they are the most beautiful companions.
mm.
And there's no social awkwardness. They're just there and I'm there and we can just show up and just be together. So
Oh, wow,
I love nature.
wow. That is. It makes me like I felt quite in my big burnout. I was felt really pulled towards nature and was present with her a lot. Especially a place just behind my house, a street or two, a little nature strip, and lots of big
Yeah.
gum trees. And there was just something particularly about, and I still haven't quite touched upon it, and maybe it's not something to intellectualize, but just continue to experience. But I really was pulled towards the trunks, and like just the
Yeah.
bark and there's different gum trees there and different trees. There's other trees and the different barks. I even took photos one day because I was just like,
Yeah.
and I do reach out touch as well. And yeah, and the history in trees, I was like, you know a lot. Like,
Oh,
that
yeah.
relation.
Full of wisdom. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
what have you seen? Like, wow. Yeah.
Same thing. Yeah. There's something for me if I'm feeling really ungrounded, which
Mm,
which you feel in burnout,
mm,
that sense of just being really fizzy and up here and not being in your body sometimes, that
yeah.
being able to
Mm,
just be with a tree and just put your hands on the trunk.
mm.
I mean, they're naturally grounded quite deep.
Yeah, the roots. Yeah.
And there's also, there's so much research around forest bathing and even like the composition of there's research about the composition of the air because of what the plants breathe out, all that fresh oxygen.
Yeah.
And historically, humans have lived in nature.
Mm,
It's only been the last few hundred years. Um,
mm.
it's not that
Yeah.
long that we've
The
kind of
Industrial Revolution, right? I think, if I remember that from my history class,
yeah,
was the
yeah.
start of
Hmm.
sort of more that city living and or creating cities, creating towns, yeah, and that booming. But you're right, a few hundred years. And some, civilizations, of course, some cultures still live within the nature. Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, across the world. So yeah, wow, wow. So let's get down into, burnout, and how that has shown up for you in your life, because it sounds like from our chats off air or and on air already that it hasn't been just once, that it's something quite cyclic for you. Yeah, can you share, I suppose, a little bit about maybe those the signs for you that okay, burnout's creeping up, or yeah, what you've come to learn from the nature of your burnouts are those signs.
Yeah. Well, I'll start with the big burnouts and what I've learned from those so that now I can see the signs and feel them coming.
Yeah, so the milder one. Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
We learn from the big burnouts, don't we? Because they're like, well, we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you can easily, it's very easy to just in the busyness of life to not listen to the body, when it's got all of these extra tingles all the time, or if you're in your head or sort of, it's easy to just rush through things. But when a big burnout happens, and like me, twice, I've had to take like 3 months off and just like
Yeah.
completely do nothing other than nourish my body,
Mm,
then they feel so overwhelmingly horrific that you never want to go back again.
mm,
So
mm.
there's something in that kind of has made me make a lot of changes in my life to make my nervous system a lot more burnout aware and burnout friendly, and do a
Mm.
lot of proactive things to prevent burnout. But for me,
Yeah.
the way that it's shown up, I mean, I suspect, well, I've been neurodivergent my whole life, but only found out
Yeah.
these.
Yeah.
I suspect I've had many, many burnouts over the years, but probably just ones that where I was kind of like, a few days, like, oh gosh, this is a lot in my body.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the two big ones that showed up were when I became a mum. So,
Mm.
and my son was 3, I had a massive one. I had extreme postnatal anxiety with him. And it was horrific because I had so much angst and fizziness and just overwhelm and fatigue in my body that wasn't able to be replenished because so much is going out when you're a parent, and
Mm.
not just by doing the things, but even in your body. I was breastfeeding,
Yeah.
and I didn't want to be on any, my doctors wanted me to go on medication, but because I was breastfeeding, I didn't want, that to kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, if I can kind of track things back, I think a lot of my burnout comes from my over responsibility to others
Mm. Mm.
and my deep sense of compassion and awareness and empathy for others. And because of
Mm.
those things, I am, I'm very outward focused. I'm a
Mm.
therapist or I've been a teacher. I've always been in these helping, caring roles.
Yeah.
I just put a post on my Instagram recently. As soon as I meet someone, I sense who they are at their core, this beautiful being.
Mm.
And I think that's a bit of a, can be a bit of a neurodivergent trait, but I'm sure that many
Mm-hmm.
people have that as well.
Oh, yeah.
So because I experience that light in people, I want to help nurture and love that. But I've
Mm-hmm.
got to, as I'm getting older now, and particularly since becoming neurodivergent, I've had to flip that within. I've seen the
Flip
light
it.
and stuff within. And by light, I don't even mean airy fairy stuff. It's more just about what my needs are, because I've been so
Yeah.
outwardly focused on meeting other people's needs, because that's something I enjoy. But with
Yeah.
side,
Yeah. And you do enjoy it's a value, a meaning, a purpose, and that can make it even more inviting, right, to overdo it, like you said, overcommit, over responsibility, because yeah, you want to, like there's a desire. It's
oh,
meaningful to you. But like anything, it can be overused and yeah, the wisdom you've gained, particularly with also that diagnosis that came later in life, that with the neurodivergence is that flipping it to the bringing that light in, bringing that. I often talk about there's this model in compassion focused therapy. They talk about the three flows of compassion, and there's the often us helping professionals, caregivers. Yeah, that flow out is
mhm.
wonderful and beautiful, and but there's a lot out. But the other flow is that one coming in that you're what is our needs, what do we need, allowing that compassion to come in. But they talk about a third one, which was really enlightening for me because whilst my compassion in wasn't great from self to self, which is one, the other one that's coming in is from others to self and allowing that flow in. And I was like, ooh, but both of
Yeah,
them are just nuances of the compassion flowing in, whether it's from others to you or self to self. These are really important. That's something that you've recognized was certainly a contributor to those earlier and big burnouts was the desire and the want and that strength you have. I really believe, yeah, some people are just, and it often is the neurodivergence. I wonder if there's a study on that, who are quite empathic, very compassionate, can connect energy wise, just body to
yeah,
body.
yeah.
Yeah, and how that can then, yeah, certainly bring about or contribute to that burnout and even compassion fatigue, which often co-occurs. Yeah,
Absolutely.
empathy fatigue. Yeah,
And
yeah.
something you brought up then was around the other thing that comes with being neurodivergent is, regulation is the big word everybody talks about now in terms of neurodivergent, being neurodivergent, that we need to regulate. And what happens is actually, so our brains
Mm,
don't consistently produce the chemicals that we need to be regulated. So it's often
hmm.
something that we need to engage in things to assist with that regulation.
Okay.
So what that means chemically is that we aren't aware, or we can't stop ourselves often from doing this opening because we're in this hyper.
Overcoming.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it makes it even harder for a neurodivergent person to even realize when we're overdoing it, because when we're in our hyper focus,
Mm.
that's just how our neurology is made. We are made to, like,
Mm.
I feel like a neurodivergent person. I don't like to use neurotypicals because I don't want it to be about them and us, but
Yeah, like creating a
having,
divide. Yeah. Yeah.
instead of having like a broad range, being able to see lots of things and focus as we need to go, we are more like this thing down here. So
Mm.
it's very kind of like almost like an ice cream cone. And we
Yeah.
really focus on the detail of things, and we really go
Mm.
deep with those.
Mm.
So because that's an enjoy, and that's a way that actually helps us produce dopamine when we're in a hyper focus, and dopamine helps
Ah,
feel good. So it's hard to actually even notice when you're in there and get out of it.
yeah.
Yeah, you're just kind of in this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Who,
yeah, it creates
yeah.
a lot of self-awareness, and that's another thing that can be challenging for neurodivergent people as well, because especially if you've been late diagnosed, because if you've been gaslit most of your life, particularly female neurodivergent, but
Mm.
not, you grow to think that who you are at your core is somehow wrong, like there's something
Mm.
that's not right about you. So you kind of camouflage or mask or whatever to conform. But then
Mm.
you don't know what your own truth is. So there's so many layers.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Yeah,
like, so many layers of, like, as you're sharing it, my brain's going, oh my God, these are all risk factors for burnout or, contributors, causes, like when we have this sense of self as, not okay, doesn't belong. I mean, that's such a risk factor for so many things, not just burnout. But it certainly create a chronic stress because we're constantly trying to fit in, trying to fit the mold and but not even know that we're, like because you didn't have that awareness that of the neurodivergence,
yeah.
didn't know about it because no one was saying anything. So yeah, that constant masking and being, I did read some research around when we're required for our roles, and this was more to do with work roles, when we're required to operate in a different way that's not authentic to ourselves for our work role, that whilst that's okay in short spurts here and there, and then outside we can be ourselves and but if we're constantly needing to operate, yeah, mask basically, that is a risk factor for burnout and again so many other things. But yeah, it just made me think of the neurodivergent then. I hadn't thought about this.
Mm.
That, yeah, as you said with your experience and so many others, that they're masking because, well, no one's hearing them, no one's seeing them, they're gaslit, that, I've got to fit in, I've got to belong. That's such a human drive.
Yeah.
So that constant stress on the system, yeah, constant strain, and not just stress, anxiety, that sense of self is so important.
Absolutely.
But
And then on
yeah.
top of that, you've got all of the sensory stuff as well.
Mm.
We have neurodivergent people. Well, when I say neurodivergent, I'm
Mhm.
typically
Yeah.
I specialize in ADHD and autism because
Mhm.
that is what I know a lot about. And my dad's autistic and ADHD,
Mm.
and it's very much in the family. I've got
Okay.
experience as well as research and practice. The sensory profile is another
Mm.
way that we can be easily burnt out because
Mm.
we have a thing called a spiky profile. And what that means is if you have a look at, even just look at the five senses,
Mm.
so each of us, rather than kind of having capacity across all of them, we might be really amazing. So speaking for myself, I have really high attunement to visual beauty. I can notice
Mm.
things like that. However, that doesn't mean that across the board visual things are great for me, because just before we got on, I had to change
Mm.
the curtains because it was too bright in my eyes.
Mm.
In terms of sound, I can really love listening to loud music if it's like kind of like chill sort of vibe. But then if I'm out and I hear a car screech, that's almost enough for my nerves
Mm.
to go into overdrive. So
Mm.
you apply this to all of the other senses, and so you have an understanding that as an AuDHD person walks through the world, we
Mm.
are not only dealing with, the dopamine, fluctuations and trying to fit in social situations, masking, but our
Mm.
own senses sometimes feel like they're under assault from the world.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so even just those two things, they're two chronic things that we just live with
Mm.
on a daily basis, and it makes us so susceptible to burnout. So,
Yeah. And it
and
makes,
especially if you're not aware of it.
and if you're not aware of it and you're, whatever you've learnt is the social norms or whatever that you're trying to push yourself into, like I should be able to handle this. And so that,
You're being too
narrative.
sensitive. You're too
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, yeah. Trying to and then trying to mask something that you can't mask, like, well,
Yeah.
not push down. But like it makes me think of you shared like one of the big burnouts was when you became a mum, and as you shared those like the things for neurodivergence, AuDHD is particularly, the social, the sensory, and I've forgotten the other one. There was another one, but those aspects that predispose, I suppose, to the burnout. I was thinking, yeah, when you became a mom, I mean, Jesus, talk about sensory, like just all like, I mean, becoming a mom. I mean, I'm not one, so just vicariously, so no lived experience, but like I just see that as such a
Mm.
huge shift, a big one. So I was like, oh my God, what was, and you didn't know back then that yeah, I had no idea.
Huge. I
Yeah.
think for me, the thing that I found the most hard was and still is, my son's 13 now, but it's the
Oh.
relentlessness of parenting. So previously, even though I was undiagnosed up until my son was 10.
Mm,
Um, so previously, before I had my son, even though I didn't know I was, neurodivergent, if I felt overwhelmed or if I started to be like,
mm,
well, then I could just go and have a nap whenever I wanted to, or
mm.
I could just go out and do what I want when I want. But then when you have a baby and their
Oh,
entire life is dependent on you, which he wouldn't take a bottle. He would only be best friend if he was with anyone else. Oh, it's just, yeah.
yeah. So he was really, really depend. I mean, a child is generally, but
Yeah.
then there's, obviously different children, different needs,
And
and
he's neurodivergent, so his little sensitivity.
he,
Ooh.
of
So
course,
yeah, so
wow.
the demands of motherhood far outweighed what I had in my tank.
Resources.
And
Mm,
because of the sleeplessness, like he didn't sleep
yeah.
through until he was 11 months old.
Wow.
So I pretty much for the first 11 months of his life lived off about 4 hours sleep a night. And
Wow.
I just couldn't recuperate. My
Mm,
nervous system was completely fried.
mm,
And it was such a heart-wrenching experience because, I mean, having been a teacher since I started working with kids when I was 16.
mm. Oh, wow. Mm.
I'm now 45. So, it's almost 30 years.
Yeah.
To, to feel, to look at my son, and this is just the most horrible thing to feel and experience as a parent, to love children so much, but then look at my son when I had him
Mm.
and I was so burnt out to just be like, I can't do this. Like, I just need
Yeah.
break. But I
Yeah.
wouldn't let myself do that because of my duty of care, but it's how I felt.
Yeah.
And it
But
was
you could,
because I was burnt out and
yeah.
I just didn't have the capacity or the
No.
resources to be able to get a break.
Yeah. And like that, I thank you for sharing such a personal experience and, a huge, difficult one, because I'm sure there's so many, yeah, so many
Mm.
women out there feeling the same. And it just made me think of that detachment they often talk about that we can experience when we're burnt out, particularly when we're really burnt out. Again, in the literature, they talk about a lot with the work roles, and we can feel. I remember with me, I felt like I would actually say I'm going off to pretend to care, which just was because with me with client work, that was, that's not me. And it's certainly not how I acted in those stages, but it's not how I usually felt. Um, and for that, I mean, I knew how horrible that was for me. And I'm just imagining as yourself and other mothers out there when it's your bub, like, oh, but of course, when we're burnt out, that detachment, I just wanted to validate it. And it's one of those, they often say in the literature, the side effect of burnout, like it's almost like the impact of burnout. We're so emotionally, mentally, physically, was about to use a swear, just
Yeah.
drained,
Mm.
overwhelmed, all of it, and trapped maybe, or feeling trapped, or, well, with a bub, it's like, yeah, I'm not going to not show up. But
Yes.
yeah, the impact is detachment and that, which then, I can imagine the mental,
Yeah.
emotional turmoil with that as well. Shit. Yeah.
Conflict with my values and who I am at my core. But
Yeah.
because of the overwhelm, like the overwhelm felt like layers and layers and layers on top of me that I couldn't even get to my core. That like it was just too,
Uh,
yeah.
Yeah, it's too much. Like it's
Yeah.
that whole I don't know if you've in your research or in your walk of life in learnings that stress model of demand versus resources, just that simple model. I know it doesn't cater for everything, but like yeah, when our demands far outweigh the resources we have from within, from outside, everywhere, whatever, like it's just it's just a very simple, we're going to we're going to burn out. We're human, like we're not a machine. I always like to say we're not AI, like,
Yeah, absolutely.
which is
I
beautiful about us. Like I don't like, AI has its place, but we're human. Yeah, we're not a machine. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I one of the terms that I thought I came up with myself, but apparently Gabby
I've had those
has
moments.
fixed it as well. But
Yeah.
one of the things that I found really helpful for me now that I know I'm neurodivergent is I need structured time away from everything by myself to have no responsibility.
Oh, I'm writing that down because I will forget.
So
Response.
Yeah.
ability.
So I need to be able to, and I think that's why being in nature is great, because the trees and nature doesn't ask me to respond, but I'm still able to feel with. And I'm like that with my art materials as well. But in social situations and with parenting,
Yeah.
your responsibility's on, both in terms of responding verbally, you need to maintain eye contact, all of these things that you're supposed to do in social situations.
Mm,
And the autistic side of me just gets burnt out with it, honestly.
mm,
Yeah, it's funny. Like there's a real play between my autism and my ADHD. My
yeah.
ADHD has a huge social motivation. I'd love to
Yeah.
be out and talking with people, but my autism can't cash those checks. My,
Yeah.
you
Shit.
know, so yeah, this I feel like if you're an autistic ADHD person or either or,
Mm,
working with professionals to help you learn about your needs and your sensory profile
mm.
is, I want to use the F word. It's imperative,
Yeah.
because we simply can't, we can't do it ourselves.
Mm.
After I found out I was ADHD, I actually got
Yeah.
a ADHD coach for a while,
Mm.
for about 6 or 8 months, and she was fabulous. She introduced me to sensory profiles. The doctors,
Nice.
psychiatrists didn't. Yeah, so I was able to kind of like work, start to look at which parts I was hyperactive in and which parts I was
Yeah.
hyper. That's the really attuned, that's in terms of visual, that's really attuned to, the sights and sounds of things. But for me, I can, my hearing and my
Mm.
taste isn't as great. So,
Mhm. But
but
again, that finding your profile, yeah, that you got through your ADHD coach, yeah. Yeah.
And something that she brought to me is, I don't know if you've heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So
Hmm.
old school, you can Google it if you haven't heard of it. And it's kind of
Yeah.
down the bottom you have is the real core things like having somewhere to live and food and shelter. And then it
Mm.
goes up and right up the top is self-actualization.
Hmm.
So Annie Romana, she is the person who was my ADHD.
Mm.
She said and she's neurodivergent too. She
Mm.
said neurodivergent people actually have something else at the base, and that's supports.
Oh,
So
yeah.
below even having a house and all of those sort of things, we need support.
Support.
And
Yeah.
and that supports in terms of people who can help us with our self-awareness, because we've got so much going on. It's hard
Yes.
and a lot of it's like I've learned so much about the brain and
Mm.
that sort of stuff, and about how it impacts the nervous system and how creativity can help move all that through. Like I've
Mm.
learned all of that intellectually, but still I have days where the part of my brain that can understand all this stuff about burnout just completely goes offline, and I'm just
Mm.
like,
Mm.
no matter
Mm.
how intelligent or how smart or how whatever, how knowledgeable you are, a neurodivergent nervous system needs
Mm.
those extra supports, because we don't have that regulated all the time where, up the top or down the base.
Yeah.
We often need those regular supports to keep us.
I love that. I love that visualization too, the high, because I have that knowledge around the Maslow hierarchy of needs. But yes, that's so true. The supports. And one of the things that I noticed as early in my career as a psychologist and at the time I wasn't, although I was aware about neurodivergency, I don't even think they were using that term back then. It was just like diagnosed conditions. I wasn't working in the space, but working with lots of men and women that I'm sure undiagnosed, because I wouldn't, because it wasn't in my wheelhouse, wouldn't ethically take on working with someone, because they need someone who is in the know. But most likely a lot of undiagnosed people at the time. But that's the thing that I noticed was that the lack of those who didn't have the resources, the support resources, people outside of themselves, often it took way longer. And that was often part of the therapeutic response is, okay, where can they connect into support? And then those who had that, even if it was one person they could rely upon or one other professional but usually someone in their personal network beyond the professional, just it didn't mean that they didn't have their days, and they didn't have, they were coming to see me, but they were ones who were able to move forward or move through or compared to others. I was just like, oh my God, support community is key. And with neurodivergency, I as I open up into that world and explore and hear more stories, I hear that, and hearing it from you, that's been key. Yeah, as well.
Hey there, listeners. Just taking a quick moment to share something special we are gearing up to launch in 2025. Thrive Beyond Burnout, a membership designed specifically for midlife women ready to reclaim their well-being and lead a more balanced, fulfilling life. As a midlife woman who experienced my own big burnout in my early 40s, I know this journey firsthand. Now in my mid-40s, I've found a more balanced, fulfilling way to live, and I'm here to support you in finding your path. In Thrive Beyond Burnout, you'll have access to weekly practices for growth, monthly masterclasses and QA sessions facilitated by me, someone with over 2 decades in mental health and a lived experience of burnout. You'll also have an ever-growing library of resources, and you'll join a private network of like-minded midlife women where you can connect, share experiences, and find encouragement every step of the way. Right now, we are running a pilot phase with our founding members to gather valuable insights, and we're excited to officially open the doors in 2025. So if this sounds like something you've been looking for, I invite you to join our waitlist. Just head over to www.burnoutspsychologysupport.com/thrive-beyond-burnout and fill out the form that you'll find at the bottom. By joining this waitlist, you will be the first to know when we launch. So are you ready to thrive? We look forward to welcoming you to the Thrive Beyond Burnout in the new year.
I feel like, as we're hearing your story, I'm certainly hearing what's helped as you've learned more about yourself, and particularly about the neurodivergency and how that impacts your health and well-being and impacts that burnout, and learning things like the sensory profile and knowing where that is for you, so you can then, I imagine, make accommodations. And I was wondering, and I know we haven't, and we don't need to explore every single burnout that you had, but what are those things that you've come to learn that help support you, particularly in that neurodivergency profile, to support you with, well, at least trying to mitigate the severity of burnout or keep you from it?
Well, definitely professionals. From my perspective as a autistic ADHD person, working with neuro-affirming professionals. So I have a psychiatrist and a psychologist, and both are neuro-affirming, which is great.
Yeah.
I'm a neuro-affirming practitioner as well. I just think it's so important because, listen to all of these nuances I'm talking about that happens in our system and in our heads. If you don't have awareness about that, and you're a professional, you may be asking people to, just go out and make more friends and go out and do this. It's oh my God, being in a social situation is too much for me, and it's not. It's not because I'm being avoidant, it's because my nervous system can't cope. I have to say, I understand that me saying that is a very privileged thing, because many people, it's bloody expensive. I'm expensive when people come to me, and so if you can, in terms of supports, if you have autism diagnosis level 2 or above, then you can access NDIS, which is the National Disability Insurance Scheme through the government, and you can get funding to help with these supports.
And I should just say, sorry to block you there, Chrissy, too, just for any of my international guests, that's an Australian disability insurance scheme that we have. Maybe, if there's something national in your area, for those who are overseas in your area, to help with that. But NDIS, definitely, because I hear you there too, that privileged position I was even in when I do seek therapy as well, that I can, afford to a certain limit, but I have that privilege. But NDIS, looking into that, so that's level 2 on above autism. You
can't go on NDIS for ADHD.
Okay.
So there's those. And then for me, I have found acceptance and commitment therapy hugely helpful. I have a lot of neurodivergent friends and acquaintances and people that I've worked with in terms of neurodivergence, and a huge majority of us find cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, it doesn't match our neurotype as well as acceptance and commitment therapy. I haven't done any research about why, but seems to be there's something around acceptance and commitment therapy that feels a bit more accessible and actionable for us.
Yeah. I wonder if it's my brain's just being an ACT therapist. It makes me I wonder if it's around what I found, because I was trained in CBT because that's what they trained us in post-grad clin psych. But then I did my own training in ACT outside, and there was a PhD student who was one of our tutors who was doing a PhD in ACT for eating disorders at the time. So she was sort of one of my first teachers, and then branched out in like some of Russ Harris's work. But it's what I found is with CBT, or at least how it was trained or taught to me, was quite rigid. Whereas with ACT, I find this, and they even use this term flexibility. Like it's like a thought is, like these experiences we have, our thoughts, our feelings, our body sensations, they are what they are. Like there's not a negative, positive category. This is good, this is bad. It is. And hey, here's some ways that we can work with them, like, so a tool, a strategy, an action towards them. And let's find what works for you. There's a very,
it's accommodating. That sounds a lot more
accommodating. Yeah, that's so true. And there's,
yes,
I think, it is. And there's this thing there in their acceptance part. They talk about these 4 A's of acceptance, and one of them's accommodation, but it's just breaking it down into something a bit more tangible. Like when we're bringing acceptance to a feeling, where we're acknowledging it. Yeah, here's anxiety, not fun, but here she is. It's allowing rather than trying to push or get rid of. And accommodating. Okay, what do we need right now? What could be useful? Not to get rid of it, but to work with her, or she's here. Accommodating. Yeah, I think, and then appreciating, which can sometimes be a bit hard. but there's just a lot of flexibility. That's just was my thoughts when you said that CBT doesn't tend to work. It doesn't. It's not conducive to the nervous system of a neurodivergent.
And another thing that happens is, because we're so prone to burnout, is and I talked about the part of the brain, where all the smarts, the kind of like the prefrontal cortex, which is
executive function.
Brain.
Yeah.
That's kind of all the, that's the things that developmentally that's enabled executive function, basically. So what happens for us, because we're so prone to burnout, it's very easy for us to go into our fight or flight, which is the core, the very first brain that was developed. And that means our executive functioning goes offline. So if we're trying to do cognitive, even in the word, cognitive behavioral therapy, we can't access that. We can't access. But we can, in terms of acceptance and commitment therapy. So when I had my first burnout, when my son was 3, we went to Pine Rivers Private, and I did an acceptance and commitment therapy course over 12 weeks. And so the way that they actually gave us an acronym, or synonym, acronym, I think. And it was accept, choose, take action.
Yes, I know that one. Yeah.
So, and I've found, and it's very based on mindfulness, but being aware and mindful, which I think is, if you're an outward focused person, bringing that mindfulness back in is really important. So, and I'm in overwhelm, or when I'm in burnout now, one of my tools is to, if I can, remember ACT. Sometimes I can't even do that. I just need to just take myself away and just, all I can do is just lay on the lounge or have a nap. When I kind of just start to come back online in terms of my brain and my nervous system, I can go, okay, I'm accepting right now. I'm feeling really burnt out. I've got no responsibility capacity. Okay, that's how things are. Accept. That's how things are. It's shit. It's hard. I've got a billion things to do. But reality is that's where I am. And then I can say, okay, so who do I choose? So, and then the C. So that C, choose, who do I want to be? And sometimes it's like, I want to be really, well, for me, mostly I'm learning to say, I want to be kind to myself in this moment. Something that can be really kind. And it might be making Lego. And as an artist, like normally I love trying all the things, but Lego for me is fabulous because I can actually open an instruction book and follow visual instructions, because that's my language. I speak visually, I think visually, and if I've got decision fatigue, I don't need to make any decisions, but I'm still
Mm.
feeling like I'm doing something that helps like nurture me. So that's the
Yeah.
C. And the take action. Yeah, that would actually be,
Yeah.
well, I'm going to get the Lego out and sit down and do it. But so the thing I love
Yeah.
about ACT is it really is flexible, because
Mm.
other times it might be, oh, I'm feeling, so for example, being an arts therapist, sometimes after I have a client and, sometimes big things are shared.
Mm.
And
Mm.
because I'm hugely empathetic, sometimes I can really almost feel that, and well, I can feel it in my own body. So after the client goes, it might be, okay, I'm feeling a constriction in my gut and quite fizzy after this session.
Mm.
Choose, who do I want to be? Okay, I want to do something for myself. I want to do something kind for myself. What might that be? Maybe it's just standing out on the grass, no shoes on, and take action. So I'll just walk out of my studio. I've got a little garden attached to my studio, and then I'll just stand on the grass and I'll just imagine, I'll either imagine it kind of like flowing out of me. Sometimes I kind of do this thing where I stand up and I put my hands down on the ground,
Mm.
and it flowing out of me like a
Oh,
water,
yeah, the energy. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
like Mother Earth, just kind of like accepting it. And
Yeah,
so
moving that energy through
yeah,
movement,
yeah,
because you're either going out to your garden, putting your feet onto the grass, connecting there, but there's a awareness of yeah, well, I'm choosing this action
yes, yeah,
to support where I'm at right now that I've accepted. Yeah, I think, yeah, and that movement, like, yeah, I love that. Yeah, just that, because that's something that I also notice with client work and feeling that energy. And now that I have that awareness to take those kinds of actions as well. And yeah,
yeah,
and usually it's something of movement, something of visual sensory, usually nature as well. But I find, yeah, and groundedness. But yeah, it's so important. But that act is really accept, choose, take action is something you've taken with you from that first big burnout and doing that 12-week course that felt like, even though you didn't have the diagnosis, and felt like it worked with you and with what you needed. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Wow, wow.
So yeah,
That's
my three main tools, I would say. So other than, like to kind
yeah.
of the three ways that I can best mitigate burnout and to move, because I feel big. I get emotional,
Mm.
which yeah. So my three main things are walking out in nature, so moving in nature,
Moving. Yeah,
creativity, so I'm moving my hands with other
yeah.
materials, moving my body, and communicating with a safe person. So
Tell us about, yeah, safe person. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so a neuro-affirming professional or friends or family that I don't have to mask around, somebody who you can just totally just let it all out.
Yeah, yeah. Be you.
And
So important, isn't it? Like, yeah,
yeah,
I've got a safe person, and really notice the difference now that I am aware of it. Like, yeah, it's just amazing. It's amazing to have that person. I've got a couple of people now, yeah, outside of professionals. Yeah. Yeah, so beautiful. Yeah.
I feel like for me, burnout coming on, and I'll
Yeah.
be honest, I most of this year I feel like I've been like Humpty Dumpty on
Yeah, the brick wall. Yeah, yeah.
ready to teetering on
Oh,
burnout. I've been finishing my master's this year, which has been huge. I'm a solo parent. I run a business. My mum's gone into aged care. I'm helping care for my dad. There's all of this
so there's
stuff.
demands of
That's right.
responsibilities have gone up this year.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're Humpty Dumpty on that wall. Yes. No, I've got the visual in my head. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But yeah.
And in terms of act, that accept,
Mm.
choose, sometimes that T can be the hardest, that taking action, because
Yeah.
we have to make a change.
Mm.
It's all good and well to go, oh, I should look after the C for choose, oh, I should look after myself a bit more. Well, it has to be something actionable, and it has to be something that is achievable. So sometimes that T,
Mm.
smallest little thing. Sometimes that T for me might be just like putting my finger on my hand,
Mm.
just like slowly. Maybe
Oh,
that's all
yeah.
I've got the capacity for. I don't have the capacity to get out my art materials to draw, but maybe I can just move my finger and
Yeah.
breathe with my finger.
Oh,
Just go,
Chrissy, I'm so glad you shared that, because sometimes, and you've probably heard it too with people you've worked with, that like going to get a massage. I mean, I know that's not, or even doing that really deep therapeutic work to work on, I don't know, bringing, acceptance, like they might be working on that one, that takes a lot. But these go-tos, like you said, the take action needs to be achievable within the scope of that responsibility that they're, you know, holding, that they can't completely take off their shoulders, like raising a baby, single parenting, taking care of your parents, it's there's certain things we can't take off. And so what is that action that we can take in that moment? And I think when you said the choose part too and the should thoughts, hey, like they're so common, aren't they? Should, must, I'm often talking about with clients. Again, they're normal thoughts to have. We all have them. But when we are guided by them, like we go with them, they can just, add an extra layer of pressure and stress to the body, to the nervous system. Whereas that I love and act, they often talk about with that choice part, shifting to the values, and connecting rather than connecting with the thought, connect with what are my values here? What am I acting on? And then, as you said, that take action is so important with what's achievable right now. It doesn't have to, it's not about perfection. It's just about doing, yeah. But it's often that hard part. And I think they talk about an act, willingness, because a willingness to do something. Yeah, that's a value in that moment. Oh, yeah.
Just having this conversation here with you today, Shannon, it's just really kind of, it's been beautiful. I love connecting with you. Really nice.
Me too.
But I think what it's really kind of helped me feel in my own body as a neurodivergent person, how important self-awareness is, that support for that self-awareness, because as I said, we have got so many layers of stuff that make self-awareness sometimes even a painful thing, because it's like, like if your nervous system is almost always in burnout purely because you're an extremely sensitive person, going into the body and being aware of what's happening, sometimes that can be like, oh God, so having a really neuro-affirming and supportive person who can help just really, I work with a somatic therapist, and she talks about titration, and it's like, imagine there's a pendulum. And so when we kind of go towards something that feels more traumatic or overwhelming in the body, you don't stay there long. You might just notice it and then come back to something that's strength-based or something that feels soothing, so that then you're allowed to slightly. But that takes a really attuned practitioner to be able to support in that sort of
situation. And I love that.
Assistance with self-awareness for neurodivergent people, because that's teaching us, helping us get back to our core. And actually for me, it's been, I feel like, from the day I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 42, and then 44 I was diagnosed with autism as well. Those days, although I had some grief with both of them, I feel like they're some of the biggest celebration days of my life, because now I get it. Now I'm like, it's not because I'm not this person who just is failing at humaning. My neurotype and the way that impacts my nervous system and social situation, I'm just different. And I always have been. I've always felt like the black sheep. And now I can actually work with people that help me lean into my strengths and know who I am underneath all of the camouflaging and the masks and what I've been told to do and what I think I should be. But that self-discovery, and self-insight, I think, is so important, and we need those.
And need the support to do that on our own, with all those layers, as you said already, that very overextended nervous system, and everything. We need that neuro-affirming support that can, like you said, it's self-awareness, even that journey, self-discovery. It's not without its discomforts along the way. And so a trained professional who can help you. I like that tritate. I can't even say it. Thank you. I need the visual word spelt out, and I don't often use that word, and I haven't written that word a lot. So if I don't have a visual in my head, I often can't pronounce words. I don't know what that is. But yes, just something I noticed about myself. But that's something I discovered with my, the big burnout at 41 for me was that I was like, I don't know at what point, but I was like, this, I need to discover myself. I need to know myself because I actually don't know me. I don't even like, how did we get here? Like, it was just this moment of, and maybe it was moments that accumulated into once I was off work, to go, okay, this is what, and I called it my first year. When I say year, I did go back to work after a few months, but not, I was like, I'm not going back to counseling. I'm not going back to face-to-face work till I sort my shit out. That was in my head. But I went at least for a year and I called it the different kind of gap year. Because I always wanted a gap year. I wanted a gap year after I finished school, which was probably my first burnout, was high school. But it just wasn't available to me. And I went straight to uni and yeah, crashed and burned. And what it got called was depression, and it was depression, but I swear it was probably, yeah, that burnout that led to the depression. But like I was like, and I wanted to take a gap year, but didn't get that gap year. And I was going to travel and work and shit like that, thing that you do. But it was a different kind of gap year because it was therapy. And it was, okay, we're taking some time off work, we're taking time off being a therapist, we're going to discover, we're going to explore, we're going to figure the shit out. It's like, this is one too many times this has happened. Yeah. I think you mentioned that earlier too. You were like, it's like the big burnouts are like, sometimes they're so big and so horrible that it's like, this can't happen again.
Yeah,
Not
something
to this level. Something needs to, yeah. And that was it for me, is like, enough's enough. Something's got to change. I never had the lingo burnout before. It was always depression, anxiety, or basically I'm failing, I can't cope, I'm hopeless, like that kind of shit. Go and do some therapy, but continue to, yeah. But it was the turning point. But I love that. Sorry, long-winded story, but self-discovery. That's what I came to learn this as. This was a growth thing. This was a like that's what the year and from there has been about. I think we're always discovering ourselves, or now I see like observing myself and growing and yeah, and learning and yeah, evolving, yeah, in this world. Yeah.
Just listening to you talk then reminded me of what happened. My ADHD was just then like, stay present, just listen, another part, but don't forget to say this.
And that conflict between like the ADHD, what you spoke to a little bit earlier, like with autism and then ADHD side, and I know I'm laughing, but at the same time I'm like, oh my God, like talk about another layer of stress or potential impact on the nervous system that can contribute to those layers of burnout. Yeah. Resources being used. Yeah. Anyway.
So I'll give I hope, a bit of a trigger warning in terms of, so I'm going to explain what happens in the body for me when I'm burnt out and how it was different for me the second time around. So just before I went into burnout, or when I noticed what I discovered was burnout, and now I understand as neurodivergent burnout, was I just felt like in my body, it felt like I was completely full of vibrating prickles all within me, through my stomach, through my legs, through my arms. I couldn't focus properly. I felt nauseous. I almost felt like I needed to put my arms up to the whole world and say, no more, I can't take a single thing. And then, went through, ended up getting a psychiatrist, got treatment, blah, 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 blah. So then my next burnout, I think my son was maybe about 8 when I had my second burnout. So the first one was when he was 3, and then the next one was when he was 8. And it was horrible to feel all of that in my body again. I'm like, oh my God, I've got all those internal prickles. I've got I can't focus. I want to say no. Oh, what do I do? But this time I went, this is burnout. Okay. All right. First thing I need to do is I need to cancel work for at least the next 2 weeks. We'll start with that. I went straight on my phone and I booked an appointment with my psychologist and my psychiatrist, and I booked an appointment with my doctor. I let my then partner know, and I told my parents. So the difference between the first one was just like, what the heck is happening? I simply cannot function, to being, holy shit, in the second one, I can't function. I know what this is. I know what I have to do. And it's given me goosebumps because the amount of it was so weird. I felt this intensity in my body of burnout experience the second time, but the amount of self-love that I felt, because straight away I was like, what I need to do right now is look after myself. It's making me teary even thinking, like, it was
Yeah.
beautiful kind of like dropping in of knowing with my body, and I knew that I had no responsibility. I couldn't. And at that point, I wasn't with my ex-husband. So I asked him, could you have our son for at least a few days, just because I'm in burnout. I just need to, and he was like, yep, that's fine. So no,
Support.
that's what I mean. So knowing what burnout is and what happens in your body, there's that self-awareness, so that when it does, you notice those signs and symptoms even start to creep in. I get prickles in a lot, but sometimes, it's only been twice that they've been in that intensity where I just can't even function. So now I notice those little prickles going on. I use them as a little, okay, I've got prickles. Let's just take a breath and be with those prickles. What do I need? Do I need right now? And even in my practice, one of the, being an arts therapist and being in that supportive role, I'm actually really honest with my clients. So I might say to them, I'm really, and I do this because I specialize in working with people with neurodivergence. And for me, disclosing and being honest about why I can't do a session, why I need to take the day off, that is giving them language to be able to do that as well. So
I love that.
I'm going to have to cancel our appointment this afternoon. My nervous system is in overwhelmed, and I just don't have the support structure at the moment to be able to. So that's been a huge thing for me to unmask and say that, because, we're taught, we think that as a professional, we've always got it together. Oh my God, most of us are professionals and therapists because we have been through hard stuff and learn about ourselves and how to help other people not go through that. So we are definitely not perfect. And I think that's, for me, and I screen people that I work with as well. And I don't mean that in a, segregating way, but I know how sensitive my nervous system is. And for me, working in things like domestic violence, I have some stuff in the past that for me, I just can't support that. And there's somebody who would be much better at that who can. So yeah, once again, it comes back to that self-awareness again, doesn't it?
Yeah, it so does. And it just makes me think of an eye screen too. And in that way, it's more about, I know what my body can, well, I'm still learning, but I have more wisdom around what she can take and what she can't. And so, the screening is for that. So for as much for me as that other person, because it's not going to be great. Yeah. And I've already lived that not screening where that went to, and having no body awareness and and I don't know where I was going with that. My train of thought went that way. But there's just so much Chrissy, that you've shared, that I'm just sitting here, my mind, is going in many directions, but one of it's like, oh, there's just so much a person listening is going to get from this. And I've thought about people I've met along the way and people that I work with, that if they were listening to this, how validating, how supportive as well in terms of things that might be useful for them, or things for them to explore and see what fits for them, and maybe even that if they're questioning whether there's ADHD or autism for them, just hearing your experience and what that might open up for them and what direction they go. So I just want to thank you so much for sharing your experience with us today. And I was just wondering if there's one, and I ask all my guests this, just one parting wisdom that you'd like, and I think you've shared so many, but if there's anything that is there that you want to leave the audience with, please share.
I'm just going to feel into my body about what is the most important. It really feels like it's about getting the support that you need to know yourself, to discover yourself, because only through having an understanding of who you are, can you then work out what you need and get that help.
It's beautiful. Oh, thank you so much, Chrissy. I feel like we could talk for hours, and even the chats we have had off there, like
Yeah.
Could, and
I
we
know.
will, hopefully, more. Maybe have you, we've already talked about this, but have you back on for another episode, maybe focusing more on the work that you do as an art therapist, working with neurodivergent people as well, particularly in the burnout space, because, sorry, there's a fly hanging around here. Hello. Well, we did say we'd have an animal. We might have a cameo. It just ended up being the fly. Not a cat, not a dog.
Let it down.
Yeah, even my animals, like I've got 2 dogs, but yeah, no, and I've left the door open. They haven't come in. Like, if people would like to, and I'm sure they will, like to get and connect with the work that you do, how could they get in touch with you? How could they connect?
Well, you can head over to my website, which is arttuition.com. So think of art and intuition together. So yeah, arttuition.com.au. Make sure it's got a .au.
And we'll put that in the show notes as well. So yeah.
And on Instagram and Facebook, I'm at Art Tuition Studio. I'm about to close my books for my one-on-one clients because I've already got quite a waiting list. But you can go on my mailing list if you'd like to, because I've got a few neuro-affirming workshops and programs coming up online for groups. I've got one starting in December called Art and Chai, and basically you can turn up in your pajamas once a month on a Wednesday night, bring along a chai, whatever art materials you've got, and I'll just share like I've made my own deck of mindfulness cards with my art. I'll pick a little card and do a reading and then do a short neuro-affirming mindfulness experience, and then we just make art together for an hour or so. So sometimes just having something booked in that's nourishing for the body, that's a support in itself.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Chrissy. I will definitely put even the social network, where to catch you there, links in the notes as well, so people can connect. And
thank you so much for having me on, Shannon. I've just so loved conversation, and thank you for the work that you're doing and that you're sharing with people. I think a lot of this stuff is kept in the shadows, about burnout and our needs around that. So interviewing people and having so many different experiences is really important, because then it connects with different people's experience and backgrounds too.
Yeah. Oh, no, thank you. It's been my absolute pleasure, and really started with myself trying to connect with people to understand my own, because it was back and then. But like, it's so diverse, and I'm so grateful, like opening up and starting to explore around neurodivergency and burnout, because honestly, it wasn't something that I understood back when I first started the pod and worked in this area. But as clients often do, they teach you, and definitely with people showing up and like, I suspect that I am, or I've just been diagnosed. I'm like, shit, this occurs a lot within burnout. Hang on here, let's
link here.
Thank you for coming in and sharing, so we can bring this out into the light.
Beautiful.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Me again. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to this episode of When Burnout Becomes Reality podcast. I do hope that you have gained some insight, wisdom, or taking away something from this episode that is helpful for you with wherever you're at in your burnout journey, or helping others with. Please also reach out. I'd love to hear from the listeners, the viewers, to find out what you're finding helpful, maybe what you still would like to know. So please don't hesitate to follow, subscribe, comment, review, like, shoot me an email. I have my details in the show notes. And if you are in need of services around burnout and you are an Australian citizen, in my business, Burnout Psychology Support, do offer group and individual services, telehealth, as well as in-person in Brisbane. So again, check out the show notes. I have my contact details, but the best thing to do is jump on my website at www.burnoutspsychologysupport.com. And just a reminder, of course, to reach out for personalized help. This podcast, whilst we strive to deliver information that can be supportive and educational for you, it is not tailored to meet your personal needs, and burnout is very individualized in terms of what gets us into burnout and what helps support us in getting out. So please do seek professional support. And I think that is it for me to share with you. Thank you once again, and take care of you. Bye for now.